With me today, Elisa Pratt of Brewer Pratt Solutions. Welcome.
Hey, Lucas. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I will, as I do, kick the mic over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your story. You can go back as far as you'd like from the beginning and then bring us forward a little bit. Tell us a little about what you're doing today and what you love.
From the beginning. Well, you and I have known each other for way too long to go.
We don't have to go
way
back that far. That's too far.
No, we're way too young. Way too young for that. But we did meet when I was on the staff side, and I had a really robust and experiential staff run with both trade associations and individual societies, and ended up moving into the consultant space. I wanted to dive in deeper. Having worked at a national mothership, if you will, I wanted to really be in the trenches with my chapters, with my associations, and live these challenges and solutions with them. So being a consultant was my path to doing that. I've said in other interviews, and I kind of consider it my mission statement. I want to be the consultant that I wish I had. And so, yeah, there was a lot of times I was kind of left hanging or disappointed or paid for things I don't think I got. And I really wanted to be that authentic, I call myself a Sherpa, to help my clients through. And especially these days, as we've moved out of survival mode into evolutionary opportunities, I'm excited. The work's been fun, and it's also allowed me to, like you, to be a podcaster. I get to have cool conversations with clients and colleagues and association friends, and so I'm excited to be in a new podcasting environment and share my association nerdery and love with your audience.
That's awesome. So you had a point, right? You left the staff side of the house, but you stayed in association. So I often ask this question too, like, why this crazy world of associations? Why stick?
Because no one understands it better than those who have come from it. We've all sat at that Thanksgiving table or met a new friend and tried to explain what we do and who we work for, or on an airplane. Oh, what do you do? It's never easy. It never makes sense to the other person. You see their face. They're trying to nod and smile and agree, but they don't get it. They don't get it. And I love associations. I consider it almost the fourth branch of government, coming from the trade association side and government affairs. I think unifying and magnifying our voices as the voice of a profession or an industry or a specialty, I think that is powerful. So staying in associations was important to me, and it's a segment of the market, the world, the industry that I want to make sure succeeds.
I like the fourth branch of government. I've never heard that before, and I may use that with your permission. But
of course,
it brings some additional clout, I think, to the industry that it already has. But just the recognition of that, it's that important, right? It's a small staff, small businesses that represent a large portion of the economic workforce and industry in the U.S. and the world.
I would argue whether you're a member of your chamber or you're a member of your professional society or you're a member of a licensing body, whatever that may be, you probably feel more connected to what they're doing and more able to contribute than you do your state delegate or your House of Representatives member or your state senator. I'm guessing you probably have more opportunities to engage and influence in your nonprofit environment than you do in your elected official in an elected official capacity.
Yeah, just the unifying of a larger body of representation, number one. And then two, the flip side of just being what other platform gives you the opportunity to talk and network about best practices, advancing the industry, technology within your industry.
It's so much more than legislative affairs. So much more than legislative affairs. And as I've become more involved with boards and the strategic direction of organizations, I see the importance of the advocacy and the government affairs side, but it's hard for most organizations of, 1 million to 10 million, where you're not the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, it's hard to hang your hat.
We can't all be the U.S. Chamber.
We can't all be the U.S. Chamber. But I think the true opportunity for impact in most organizations is more so what you just said: best practices, professional development, ongoing education, leadership opportunities, networking, all of those things that have maybe a more personal and direct impact on individuals, on their careers, on their businesses, than the policy opportunities of a large, major association.
Yeah. So I follow you online. I follow your solutions. So I know a little bit, but tell our audience, because you said you do get to work now with a lot of boards. I see you doing a lot of great work with associations. It's nice when you can walk in sometimes as the voice of expertise or the voice of reason or the consultant that you wish you had, as you mentioned. What are you noticing at the board level that becomes a lot of the conversation, and where do you find yourself being of greatest value to those boards? What's the trend?
I consider my superpower authenticity and constructive candor. And it's become pretty apparent to me that not all executive directors have the political capacity, the political capital, really, to say what needs to be said in all environments. It's coming in as the third party, the outside voice, the association expert, as you mentioned. You can shine a light and you can help boards see things that maybe the staff leadership don't have the opportunity to reiterate or to say in a way that it needs to be said. So that's one of my most kind of favorite pieces is helping people see and understand what's probably already there, but that they need to accept or handle. It may not be comfortable, but it's something that's going to need to be addressed. And I'm happy to be the bad guy, if I need to come in and kind of point things out and help them through the hard stuff. That's what I'm there to do. It also brings me to my other passion, which I never expected, which is strategic planning. I hated strategic planning as a staff person. Hated it.
Why? Let's stop there for a second. Why did you hate it?
I hated it because the board members never cared about it. They already came into it with a pessimism, with an eye roll, and I hired consultants that would parachute in and let the boards have these crazy, unrealistic discussions and create big wish lists of unrelated things out of our jurisdiction, and then they disappear, and I'd be left with this pile of what should I say?
Just loose ends.
That's so kind of you.
I'm being kind.
Yes. And then you as a staff person are held accountable to these things. So whatever came from this retreat or whatever it was didn't have to be actionable, didn't have to be data driven, didn't have to be in service to our mission or our membership. So I moved into consulting not with the intention of taking on strategic planning, but it's become my personal mission to make strategic planning relevant and fun and engaging and something that the staff embrace and appreciate and don't hate and resent.
Yeah. I like what the phrase that you used just a few minutes ago, that sometimes they just don't have the political capital, right, to speak the truth and be as candid in a gracious way that they need to be. And that's not necessarily a fault or a negative of the leadership. I think we talk about in our organizations, you have to make deposits so you can make withdrawals. And so it could be that they've gone through a period where they just had to make a lot of withdrawals and there's no more, relationship capital in the bank to pull on. And so you need somebody else to do it, or they're just different gifts, right? I think self-recognition at the leadership level is so important because you just can't do it all, right? There's no magic unicorn CEO or executive director out there that's good at all of the areas of strategic planning. And so kind of know your weaknesses. And I assume, or maybe I shouldn't assume, is that part of the conversation on the front end? And you're exploring, like, is this going to be a good relationship for you? How do you uncover where you can add the most value from that? Are there questions that you ask? And I assume some come very aware of their lack of gifts in certain areas. Maybe I'm going to continue to be kind.
Well, you mentioned deposits and withdrawals, and I think these last 3 years have required a lot of both. And some executives, whether they were in place before COVID or they came on just at the beginning of COVID or during, everyone's at a different place in the balance of their account. And some had to rely very heavily on their boards. Some are looked at with great appreciation and adoration from their boards because they got them through COVID. So every organization is a little bit different. But for me, it's very important, number one, that staff are involved in strategic planning. I won't engage with a board that isn't willing to have their senior staff as a part of it. And I think that partnership is necessary to demonstrate during the process, but also for ownership and implementation after. And I want boards to know their jurisdiction. I use a metaphor, I call it the waterline. And boards and leadership should live above the waterline. That's where you identify your strategic areas of focus, your big picture objectives. That's the why and the what. Below the waterline are the tactics. Below the waterline is the how, the when, the who, the how much, the budget year, the data, the metrics. And I like to remind boards, and let's be honest, boards are made up of type A, high-performing, problem-solving individuals in many cases. I know, who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? But, by nature, they've succeeded, they've volunteered, they've put themselves in this position of decision-making and authority, and they often tend to want to live below the waterline. And that is not a good use of their expertise, of their time, and it also muddies the water of roles and responsibilities. So helping them see that and setting that language is one of the first steps I usually undertake in strategic planning and preparation, is helping people understand where their jurisdiction is, what their role is, and gain confidence in what others are going to be doing in their roles.
What does success look like coming out of an engagement then? Like, how do you measure that?
So success for me in strategic planning, there's a couple different ways, and it's different for every organization. Success for me means that in that first 6 to 12 months after planning, the staff and the board have been able to say no to what isn't part of that new strategic focus or part of the new list of priorities. So it's not only served to give them focus, but then to provide guardrails for all the fun, well-intentioned, passionate ideas of our beloved volunteers. So being able to say no is an important piece for me. Another piece is allowing for alignment, allowing to ensure that the leadership appreciates capacity and knows what's realistic. And then the alignment of those resources can be structured in the most effective way. One of the reasons I did want to kind of remake and reimagine strategic planning is because there was never a phase of implementation planning. It was just the plan, and then it got put on a shelf and it was done. So now, as I come from that staff experience, I build into my engagements an implementation planning phase. So a measure of success for me is when the staff have been able to bridge kind of the ideation at the board retreat or by the board of directors into a project management phase. What's next? Who's going to own this? What is it going to cost us? How are we going to break this down into small bites and bring it to life? So when I see an organization that has embraced that implementation planning phase and really leveraged it for scalability and to break that plan down over individual business years, that to me is success.
It's fun to watch that happen too, right? On the back end of an engagement, somebody takes your recommendations, implements it, and then suddenly they're in a better place. I think there's like a good sense of pride in that. So give us a real life example, best you can. If you have to sanitize certain parts of names and implementation strategies, you must. But give us a real life example.
Maybe the one piece I didn't mention as a measure of success, which is one that I find is the most important example to me, is when staff from the beginning to the end of the process feel heard and feel seen. I propose and always encourage surveying of the staff, a workshop phase with the staff. And most recently, I've worked with a couple new CEOs. It's their first CEO gig. They came on during COVID. They've survived it, and now they've really emerged into what real chief staff executive work looks like. They're not just putting out fires. They're not just trying to survive. They don't have that disruption as an excuse per se or an opportunity that they may have had over the last 3 years. And so strategic planning has been their first chance to kind of take a deep breath, reassess, and put forth a path. And so those examples, mostly with medical and professional societies lately, I've taken great pride and been inspired by these new executives who have found their voice through strategic planning, not by being the bad guy, not by pushing an agenda, but by learning how to listen and also learning how to be heard, how to engage in a way that is mission driven and member focused, but also realistic and true to their staff, true to their resources. That is what all leadership comes down to. When you can inspire, but you can also provide your board the information in the right way to allow them to make decisions in real terms.
Yeah. I like the being heard thing. That definitely resonates with me on many levels. Not that we're going to go back to our past. So we're not going to roll the clock again. But in the current state, and again, I'll tread lightly here. I recently hired somebody for one of the organizations, and one of the main reasons that they shared that they're leaving is their current leadership doesn't allow staff as part of their strategic planning, and they simply just didn't feel heard. And I'm just such a believer of pulling, as you said, pulling more people into the room, one, so that they can listen, but that's not actually the intent. The intent, I think, is better served when you point at them, not in a, I'm putting the spotlight on you, but hey, I want to hear your voice. I want to hear what you have to say. And sometimes, the quietest people in the room who don't naturally have a microphone in their hand or a megaphone attached to their mouth 24/7 are the ones that come up with the best ideas.
Well, you mentioned not putting them on the spot, and I've found that it's absolutely necessary for me and part of my due diligence in the process to engage with the staff beforehand and privately and with anonymity, so that when we're in that room, when we're at that retreat or at that strategic workshop, I can voice some of their concerns or their thoughts or their ideas without having to point, without having to put, Sally or Jesus or Chris on the spot, because they're not going to say the same thing in front of their board or in front of their staff. So giving them that protection, I joke with my clients, my staff, the staff side of the clients, sometimes, I'm a human shield. I'm here to take the bullets. I'm here to help you push forth on the offensive towards a goal. I'll protect you. I'll protect your ideas. I'll ask them the right questions. I'll hold both sides accountable. But I need you to be honest with me. What's working? What's not working? So it's there's a lot more psychology and organizational psychology to it than maybe I ever had appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you walk in and you do some of that, and I've witnessed and been a part of that firsthand, is you step back after that interview process and you sort of start to piece it together and you go, we're never going to be effective in creating actionable changes within this organization until that relationship aspect is repaired,
Right.
whether they know it or they don't. Sometimes they do. They'll tell you right in the interview, well, we're never going to agree with this person or this subcommittee or what have you, because in 2007, somebody did something and they never forgot it and never forgave them.
Yes.
Or on the flip side, they didn't recognize that this was an issue. They've just been talking in two different directions without knowing it.
Yeah. Associations have the longest memories. Association staff, association members, the longest memories.
Yeah. Well, if you zoom out, because you're doing lots of surveying, you're talking to boards and groups, like what are some of the things that you're hearing more than once that aren't so unique these days?
It's funny you use that phrase, not so unique. There are so many challenges, and whether it be governance, whether it be the leadership pipeline, whether it be realistic strategic goals, whether it be revenue diversification, whether it be leveraging technology, all these things that I don't know if we really thought we were going to solve all these problems during COVID when we had that disruption as a way to force the hand of innovation. But what's old is new again. We are still in some of these challenges and maybe never will be out of them. I always admit there's no silver bullet in any of these verticals and any of these pipelines, but and it's different for every organization. So I think what's been reinforced to me most over the last, let's say, 12 to 24 months is that we're always talking about a recipe that includes people, the plan, the process, and culture. And so, that 3-part recipe, you're going to have different amounts of ingredients in each. There are certain pieces of that you can control more than others that you can fix or change more quickly than other parts of the recipe. And every organization needs it to be tweaked a little differently. Mm-hmm. So it's, and culture will always be king. So it would be easy to come in and write a plan. It would be easy to come in and put forth guidelines or, an operational outline or write some new bylaws. None of that matters if the other two pieces of the recipe are not healthy, are not in the right alignment. So it is more of that psychology of associations than I probably expected it to be as a new, not so new consultant. Where Brewer Pratt Solutions is almost 7 years old, but I learn with every new client, and I learn with every repeat client, and I'm so honored by the feedback that we've gotten and the help that we've been able to deliver.
Well, congrats on 7 years. That's awesome. I'm sure it flies by, but you get such great insights to all these different areas within the association world, and the knowledge you're sitting on is incredible. I am glad, going back to this last notion I'm glad you said that the culture is the king. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
I wonder how much recognition of that is there, right? On the surface, I would say it seems like there's been lots of conversation about culture and areas of culture and diversity and inclusion, all these very, very important aspects of culture. How often does culture win in those conversations, though? Are we really walking the walk?
I think the answer is, in most cases, no. Culture is king. It's also the most systemic and difficult element to improve, to correct, to address, to admit that you have a problem. And so people often focus on the others. They want, we just need a new system. We just need a new database. We just need a new person in that position. We just need new bylaws. Again, none of that will matter if the culture isn't calibrated correctly, and maybe most importantly, isn't lived. Culture is something you can prescribe. You can't prescribe it. It has to be lived. You mentioned diversity and inclusion, and I think a lot of people have focused on what culture looks like instead of how it is, how it translates into behaviors, how people treat each other, how we execute the policies, how we advance the mission. The who and the what are important. The how we execute culture, how culture comes to be and what it looks like is the harder part.
Yeah. I recently read something that said basically the culture isn't the people that we work with, or teamwork. You could insert a lot of things, but it's a group of people that we trust, right? That's what really makes and elevates everything. And when you trust the group of people, that's when you can do all the execution. You have a book you're about to pull out?
I was going to grab that. Yeah, this is totally unscripted. So.
First of all, we should tell everybody all of this is unscripted because Lisa said specifically, I do single takes and I don't prep. So normally we have 10 or 15 minutes where we get on and we talk about what we're going to talk about. And she was like, nope, that's not how we do it. And I'm like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah, no, I will. I had a employer who sent me to a leadership coach and invested in my professional development as an executive. And I would say the most important book I ever read as a association professional, as an adult, as a human being on this planet, was called The Anatomy of Peace. And it really, the Arbinger Institute, you can still see my little tabs.
Yeah.
But I've given it to some different clients, and it really, to me, it helped me understand what culture really could and should be like, but not in the sense of a written document, but in the sense of how you treat human beings in different situations, and how you adjust your mindset to approach people in the right way.
Anyway,
free plug.
Is there one thing in there that kind of sticks out to you as an overarching actionable item from that?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you could flip right to some of your tabs in your notes, but there's something that sticks out.
So I did. This is underlined and with a smiley face. Have you ever been in a conflict with someone who thought they were wrong? Yeah. It reminds you, everyone's the hero in their own story. Everyone thinks they're right. And you have to appreciate someone's perspective. This may be true about your competitive association or the other side of a legislative battle that you're on. Everyone's coming to the table on their own high ground.
Yep.
So just an interesting perspective that may help you find humility in your own perspective, but also instead of victory, common ground, changing how you measure success in your engagements with others, in your interactions with colleagues or board leaders or other organizations. Yeah.
I read something that what you just said reminded me. I was reading a book about, it was a negotiating book. And the thing that stuck out to me is you can increase either your ego or your bank account, but not both, right? That's just not how that works.
Right. Yeah, it's and there's so many. That's another thing I love about associations. I mean, whether it's economics, whether it's politics and government affairs, whether it's sociology and getting the best out of people, it's just this magical place where all of it comes together. And the best part is we're in service to a mission.
Yeah.
So I do like that part of it, and getting to work with different organizations. I learn a little bit about a new industry, a new profession every week, every month. And it's really great. Some are industries I never would have come upon in my own life. So it's if there's anyone out there considering associations, don't wait. Don't land here by accident. Come into associations with purpose and passion, because it's a place where you see and can join with others who really do want to make a difference. And we do that through people, process, and culture.
Yeah, that's right. I've kind of narrowed it down to there's three ways. There's the people who do just completely stumble into associations. There's a small group of people who were, I'd say, born into associations, right? Yeah. Their parental units are executives currently, and I have a couple on staff that have just sort of grown up in the industry, if you will.
Yep.
And then the third is you go some other route, you realize it's completely not fulfilling, and you start looking for something that is mission driven.
Yeah.
And you like the idea of volunteering, you like the idea of pursuing something that matters, and you find your way in.
Yeah, no, it's, and my path was not related per se, but it made sense. It wasn't linear, but I came through the political doorway and political action committees and government affairs, and the advocacy side of associations. So that has a special place in my heart. But if you're here in the association space, I don't know, there may not ever be greener grass. This may, associations may be, this may be the field of dreams of being able to really have a positive influence on people, on professions, on industries, on policy, and I love it here.
Yeah, here. So, field of dreams. You said associations were a magical place. I'm going to give you the magical wand, so to speak, and you can wave it, Lisa, and you can either change one thing forever about associations, or removing or adding.
Okay. So the one thing that I will want to do away with forever is the past chairs committee. Have you seen these? They become this country club.
I think this is good. Very good.
They become this country club of former leadership. And I've had the privilege of working with a few over these last few years. And I will say they are not often ambassadors of progress.
Yes. They're not out to pasture. I mean, that's a crude.
No, this is how they prevent themselves from going out to pasture, and how they cling on to, authority and influence and all the like. But I don't know if I have yet to see one that works as it was intended.
I was going to ask you, there must be a benefit here somewhere, just so that, I'm not afraid of offending people, but just so that we're not in this instance, because you're the one that's worked with them self-admittedly. So I'm trying to help you out here. Yeah.
Well, usually they're created because the staff executive or someone along the way, or a past chair in previous years, didn't want to leave or wasn't willing to, wave goodbye to someone who had termed out, and needed a pasture to put them to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been, they continue to become, a hindrance in many ways, So
I think at a high level, right, the concept could be beneficial when there's a lot of history, right? So you think about associations as a led by a group of people, managing a group of people, but there's so many relationships and history that happens within that. So the idea is, if I got dropped into a new association, let's say I'm not even from industry, it would be nice, theoretically, to be able to go back to somebody, a former leader, and go, hey, why is this member just so upset about our annual meeting? Or, why will this person not get on board with this governance committee? Or, they're just tapping the wisdom. But to your point, maybe not worth it.
Right. Well, and I would say you don't need to have a committee or a council or a formal entity of past leaders to send an email or to pick up the phone.
Yeah. So you've eliminated, you took the magic wand and you said those are gone. Can you replace it with anything else?
I don't know if this is not a direct correlation, but if I get to create something because I've eliminated something,
you do.
I would create requirement's not the right word, but the accepted, known best practice that at least senior staff participate in strategic planning. That's just common, accepted, not questioned, not threat to anyone, and boards embrace that with open arms.
I I think that's a great suggestion. And if you're given the magic wand, yeah, that's a good one to use it on.
Yeah, that's not too provocative. I think I
No.
took the safe route on both. I saved the provocative stuff for my podcast. I don't want to throw any grenades on your podcast.
They're welcome here, by the way. But maybe we wrap it up there, and also with a recommendation: go check out Lisa's podcast after this if you're not already a follower and a guest there. But
Absolutely.
as we do on our podcast, we ask our guests: is there somebody else, Elisa, you think that our audience would benefit from hearing from?
You know, he's fun. He's an expert in governance and associations. Takes a little different slant on things than I do, but he's my co-host on the Association Transformation podcast. But Andrew Chamberlain, the CEO and co-founder of Elevated, would be really fun. I think you'd like him. Everybody loves the accent. Accents
are great.
I would encourage you to have him on and see what kind of a spin you get from him. We banter and bicker and try to advance association excellence every 2 weeks on association transformation. But left to his own, he's a pretty amazing association nerd on his own.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, invite is going to be on the way shortly. And thank you, Lisa, again for joining us, giving us some of your precious time and sharing your thoughts and story.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Lucas. It's great to see you again. And we can go back over some of those old stories, offline.
We will. And I'll see you on the circuit, as they say, too. So
That's right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.